The day had started like any other for Clara Bennett. She woke up early, brewed her coffee, and stared out the window of her small Seattle apartment, watching the golden leaves dance across the street. Autumn was her favorite season, but it also carried memories. She tried to forget memories of someone she once loved deeply, someone who had left without saying enough. After finishing her morning routine, she decided to stop by her favorite bookstore cafe, the one tucked between a flower shop and an antique store. It was a place that always felt like home, quiet, warm, filled with the smell of roasted coffee and old pages. She often went there to write or think, but that day she just wanted a break from the noise inside her head. As she pushed open the door, the bell above it chimed softly. She walked toward her usual table near the window, where the light fell just right on the books stacked nearby. The cafe was peaceful, filled with the hum of soft conversation and the gentle hiss of the espresso machine. She ordered her drink caramel latte. Extra foam settled down with her notebook. She was about to write something when she heard the door open again. It was a simple sound, but something about it made her glance up. And then her world froze. Ethan Reed. He stood just a few feet away, dressed in a dark coat, hair slightly damp from the drizzle outside, holding his phone in one hand. His eyes scanned the room, unaware of her at first. Clara's breath caught. She hadn't seen him in 2 years. Not since the day everything fell apart between them. He looked almost the same. Maybe a little older, maybe a little more tired. But his presence, his quiet confidence, his calm way of moving was unmistakable. The air seemed to tighten around her. She tried to look down, to act as though she hadn't seen him, but her eyes refused to obey. It was like her body remembered him before her mind could stop it. Memories came rushing back: late-night walks, shared laughter, the warmth of his hand, and the silence that came after their last goodbye. And then, as if drawn by something invisible, his eyes found hers. For a second, neither moved. It was as if the noise of the cafe disappeared, replaced by the sound of their own racing hearts. The look in his eyes wasn't one of surprise, it was recognition. The kind that only exists between people who once meant everything to each other. He smiled first. A small, unsure smile that carried both hesitation and longing. Clara's chest tightened. She should have looked away, pretended she didn't care, but she didn't. She held his gaze, caught between confusion and something dangerously close to hope. Ethan took a breath, then began walking toward her. Each step felt like a wave of old emotions crashing back into her life. She told herself to stay calm, to act casual, but the truth was she could barely think. The closer he got, the louder her heart seemed to beat. Clara. His voice was exactly how she remembered, steady, warm, familiar. She nodded, unable to form words. "Hi, Ethan." For a moment, they both just stood there, caught in that strange space between the past and the present. Finally, he gestured toward the empty chair across from her. "Mind if I sit?" She wanted to say no to protect herself, to avoid reopening old wounds, but the word never came. Instead, she just nodded again. "Sure." He sat down slowly, setting his coffee on the table. She noticed it immediately, black with a hint of cinnamon. The same order he used to get every time. That tiny detail felt like a punch of nostalgia. And she wondered if he remembered too. "I didn't expect to see you here," he said after a long pause. His eyes searched hers as if trying to read what 2 years had done to her. "I come here often," she replied softly. "It's kind of my spot." He smiled faintly. "Still love your coffee in quiet corners, huh?" "Some things don't change." He nodded, and for a few seconds, neither spoke. The silence wasn't uncomfortable, but heavy, filled with everything they hadn't said before. Everything they never had the courage to admit. Clara studied him quietly. He looked good, different, maybe a little more grounded. But his eyes were the same. The same eyes that once told her everything without a word. She felt a familiar ache she thought she'd buried long ago. She tried to shift the conversation somewhere safer. "So, how have you been?" Ethan leaned back slightly, his fingers tracing the rim of his cup. Busy. Work's been crazy. Moved back to Seattle a few months ago. Didn't think I'd run into anyone I knew. Seattle's not that small, she said lightly, trying to hide her nerves. He smiled. Maybe not. But it seems the right people still find you. Her breath caught again. She didn't know how to respond. The years apart hadn't erased the connection between them, had only buried it under time and distance. And now, sitting there in that small cafe, it was all rushing back. They talked for a while, small things at first, work, life, places they'd been. But every word carried a deeper meaning beneath the surface. Every glance lingered a second too long. When Ethan reached for his cup, his hand brushed against hers. The touch was brief but electric, like something inside her woke up. He didn't pull away. Neither did she. The air around them shifted, soft but undeniable. Clara felt her pulse rise, her breath quicken. It wasn't just memory, was something alive, something real. And for the first time in a long while, she didn't know if she wanted to stop it. As they sat there, lost in quiet conversation, the world outside the window kept moving. Cars passed, rain began to fall softly. People hurried by but for Clara and Ethan. Time had paused. She didn't know where this would lead, or if it would lead anywhere at all. All she knew was that the moment he walked toward her, something inside her changed. The wall she had built over 2 years started to crack. And a part of her one she thought was gone began to feel again. He didn't stop at the door when he saw her. He walked straight toward her, as if it had always been meant to happen this way. And she didn't look away. Not this time, because deep down, Clara knew some stories don't end when people walk away. They end when hearts stop trying. And hers clearly hadn't stopped yet. The air in the cafe felt warmer than before. The soft hum of music mixed with the sound of quiet conversation and the faint clinking of cups. Clara sat across from Ethan, trying to steady her thoughts. The moment felt unreal. 2 years of silence suddenly broken by chance, or maybe by something that had never really ended. Ethan stirred his coffee slowly, his hand steady but his expression unreadable. Clara watched the cinnamon swirl into the dark liquid, remembering how he used to do the same thing whenever he was thinking too much. Some habits, it seemed, never faded. So he began carefully. "How have you been?" Clara gave a small shrug. "Busy? Work's been? A lot. Life's quiet now." Smiled faintly. "Quiet sounds nice." "'Tis," she said, though she didn't mean it. Quiet was just another word for lonely, but she wasn't about to say that out loud. The space between them felt filled with invisible words, the ones they never said when it mattered, the ones that could have changed everything. Ethan leaned back, his eyes studying her face as if trying to memorize it again. She looked different. Older, maybe a little more guarded, but her eyes were still the same, soft and warm, like the first day he met her. "You still come here a lot?" he asked. "Every weekend," she replied. "It's peaceful. Helps me think." He nodded, glancing around. "You always liked places that smelled like books." Clara smiled for the first time, a small, genuine smile that caught him off guard. For a brief moment, the years between them didn't exist. It was just two people who once knew each other too well, sitting in the same place again. She looked at him. "What about you? What brings you back to Seattle?" "Work mostly," he said. "But also, I guess I missed it. The rain, the noise, the people, feels like home in a strange way." "And yet you left it," she said softly, not accusingly, but the words still carried a quiet truth. He sighed. "Yeah, I did." The conversation faded again, leaving only silence. But it wasn't an empty silence, it was full of tension, of memory. Clara could feel the old ache in her chest, the one she thought she'd buried for good. Every small gesture of his, the way he adjusted his sleeve, the way he looked at her when she spoke, pulled her backward in time. He took a sip of coffee, then smiled slightly. "Still drink caramel lattes?" "Yes," she said. "And you still take yours black with cinnamon?" He laughed softly. "You remember that?" But it was honest. Their eyes met again, and for a moment, the world outside seemed to slow down. Rain began to tap gently against the cafe windows, a soft rhythm that somehow made everything feel more intimate. Ethan leaned forward, resting his elbows on the table. "I didn't think I'd ever run into you again." "Me neither," she replied. "I used to wonder sometimes where you went, what you were doing. Then I stopped wondering." He stopped letting it hurt, she said simply. He didn't answer right away. His expression softened, and for the first time she saw guilt flicker behind his eyes. "I didn't mean to disappear like that, Clara. I thought I was doing the right thing at the time." "The right thing doesn't usually feel like breaking," she said quietly. He looked down. "You're right." The honesty between them hung in the air like a fragile thread. Neither of them wanted to pull too hard. Afraid it might snap, Clara looked out the window. People hurried past, umbrellas opening and closing, shoes splashing in shallow puddles. Life kept moving, unaware that two old lovers were sitting in a small corner of a cafe, trying to remember how to breathe in each other's presence. When she turned back, Ethan was watching her. "You look good," he said softly. She smiled politely. "You always did say that." "I always meant it," he said, his tone quiet but sincere. Her pulse quickened, but she forced herself to stay calm. This wasn't the time for old feelings to come rushing back. Yet something inside her didn't want to stop them either. Minutes passed like hours. The space between them seemed to shrink with each shared glance. He reached for his cup again, and as he did, his fingers brushed against hers. It was a small touch, accidental maybe, but it made her heart skip. Neither of them moved their hands away right away. The contact lingered, simple yet powerful. Ethan finally spoke. "Do you ever think about how things ended?" "Sometimes," she said truthfully. "Mostly when I wonder what would have happened if one of us tried a little harder." He nodded slowly, his thumb tracing the rim of his cup. "I thought about calling you so many times, but I kept thinking it was too late." "It was," she said, then paused. "Until now." The words slipped out before she could think, and they both froze. There was something about the moment, the rain outside. It's a soft light, the warmth of the coffee that made honesty easier. Ethan looked at her with a tenderness that made her chest tighten. "Maybe you're right," he said quietly. "Maybe it's not too late after all." Clara didn't reply. She didn't know what to say. A part of her wanted to believe him, to reach out and bridge the distance between them. But another part reminded her of the pain, the nights she'd cried. The messages left unanswered. Still, she didn't stand up. She didn't walk away. He smiled again, softer this time. "It's strange," he said. "I've met so many people since you, but I never really connected. Not the same way." Clara's voice was steady, but her heart was not. Maybe that's because some connections don't end. They just wait. He looked at her like he'd been waiting to hear that sentence for years. The cafe's lights dimmed slightly as evening crept in. The rain outside grew heavier, tapping against the glass like a steady drumbeat. Neither of them wanted to move. "Would you like to take a walk?" Ethan asked suddenly. "Just like old times." Clara hesitated. She could have said no. It would have been safer to leave things where they were, two people sharing coffee and memories. But she couldn't. Something deeper pulled at her. Something that told her this meeting wasn't an accident. She nodded slowly. "Okay." Ethan stood, pulling on his coat. He offered her his hand. She looked at it for a moment, then took it. The warmth of his fingers sent a quiet rush through her. It felt both new and familiar, like touching a piece of the past she didn't know she'd been missing as they stepped outside. The cool rain hit their faces, soft and cold. The city shimmered with reflections from the lights, everything glowing gold and silver. For the first time in a long while, Clara didn't feel alone. She glanced at Ethan, who was walking beside her, hands tucked in his pockets, a small smile on his lips. He didn't stop, and neither did she, because sometimes life gives you another chance to finish the story you never meant to leave unfinished. The sky had turned gray by the time Ethan and Clara left the cafe. The streets glistened with light rain, and the air carried that soft smell of wet earth and coffee. It wasn't supposed to rain that evening, but somehow it felt right, as if the world itself was slowing down for them. Ethan offered to walk her home, and though she hesitated, she didn't say no. Something about his voice, calm and familiar, made her want to keep walking beside him. They stepped out into the drizzle. Clara pulled her scarf tighter while Ethan opened his umbrella, but a sudden gust of wind turned it inside out. They both laughed, and just like that, the heavy air between them eased a little. For the first time in years, they were laughing together again, not the way they used to, but close enough to make her heart ache. "Looks like your umbrella missed you," Clara teased, trying to hide the warmth in her voice. "Guess it got rusty waiting for me," Ethan said, shaking the water off. "Just like my timing." Clara glanced at him, wondering if that last line meant more than it sounded. He met her eyes briefly, and the silence that followed was heavy, meaningful. The rain grew steadier, soft drops falling onto the pavement, tapping rhythmically against their shoes. They decided to keep walking, even without an umbrella. The cold didn't bother them much. The city around them glowed under the streetlights, wet asphalt reflecting soft yellow light. Cars sliding by, people rushing past. But they weren't rushing. They walked slowly, side by side, like two people moving through a memory they didn't want to end. "You still live near Green Lake?" Ethan asked after a while. "I moved," Clara said. "Got a place closer to work. Quieter, smaller. It's nice, but it doesn't feel like home yet." He nodded. "Home's a strange thing, isn't it? Sometimes it's not a place at all." She looked at him, curious. "Then what is it?" He smiled faintly. "A feeling, I think. Maybe a person." Her chest tightened. He wasn't looking at her when he said it, but she felt every word like a heartbeat. She wanted to say something, but the words caught in her throat. The rain kept falling, and all she could do was listen to the city. To the sound of their steps, to the quiet between them. After a few blocks, they stopped at a small park. The trees swayed gently in the wind, their branches dripping with water. Ethan walked toward a bench under a flickering street lamp and sat down. Clara hesitated, but joined him. The cold would press through her coat, but she didn't mind. The world felt distant, as if they were the only two people left awake. Ethan looked out at the park and spoke softly. "Do you ever think about how things could have been different?" Clara didn't need to ask what he meant. "All the time," she said. He turned to her, then his expression open, raw. "I never stopped thinking about you, Clara. Not once." Her breath caught. She had imagined hearing those words 100 times before. But now that they were real, they felt heavier than she expected. "Then why didn't you say something?" she asked quietly. He looked down at his hands. "Because I thought you didn't want me to. You didn't call, and I figured maybe you moved on." "I tried," she whispered. "But some people don't leave your heart, no matter how much time passes." The sound of rain filled the silence that followed. It was soft, steady, almost comforting. Neither of them moved. The world around them blurred into shades of silver and gray. Ethan reached into his coat pocket, pulling out a small photograph. "I found this last week," he said, handing it to her. It was a picture of them taken years ago at a summer fair. They were laughing, sunlight in their hair, cotton candy in her hand. Clara smiled faintly, tracing her finger over the image. "I can't believe you still have this." She said, "I kept it in my wallet the whole time," he admitted. "Even when I told myself I was over you." Her throat tightened. She didn't know what to say. The rain began to fall harder, but neither of them moved to leave. Instead, they sat there, faces damp, hearts open. After a long silence, Clara finally spoke. "You hurt me, Ethan. When you left, it felt like everything I trusted just disappeared. And I didn't know how to fix that." He nodded slowly. "I know. I was scared back then of commitment, of failing, of not being enough for you. So I ran. And I've regretted it every day since." The honesty in his voice broke something in her. For the first time, she saw him not as the man who left, but as the man who had been lost too. She took a slow breath, her eyes glistening. "I don't know if I can go back," she said softly. I'm not asking you to, Ethan replied. I just want you to know I'm still here. I don't want to run anymore. For a long moment, they just looked at each other. The rain softened again, turning into a mist that sparkled under the streetlight. The air felt fragile, full of everything unspoken: forgiveness, pain, love that never really left. Clara's heart beat fast, but not from fear this time. From something closer to relief. She realized she didn't need to decide everything tonight. Maybe it wasn't about fixing the past, but understanding it. When she finally stood up, Ethan followed. They began walking again, quietly, side by side. She didn't know where they were going, but somehow it didn't matter. Each step felt lighter than the one before. At one point, Ethan slipped off his coat and placed it over her shoulders. You'll catch a cold, he said simply. She smiled faintly. You still worry too much. And you still forget your umbrella, he replied. She laughed softly, the sound echoing through the empty park. It wasn't forced, it was real. It felt like something inside her had finally started to heal. They reached the edge of the park, stopped near a glowing streetlight. The rain shimmered around them, then the city hummed quietly in the background. Ethan looked at her one last time that night and said, maybe this is the second chance we never gave ourselves. Clara met his eyes, her voice barely above a whisper. Maybe it is. The rain slowed to a drizzle, the night calm again. They didn't say goodbye. They just stood there, not sure where tomorrow would take them, but unwilling to stop walking together, because deep down both of them knew some stories don't end. They wait for the right time to begin again, and that night under the Seattle rain, their story started to breathe once more. The rain had softened to a mist by the time Clara and Ethan reached the edge of the park. The city around them shimmered beneath the streetlights, puddles reflecting golden light. It was late, but neither wanted to say goodnight. Their walk had stretched longer than they expected, but time no longer mattered. The air between them was quiet but alive, filled with words they hadn't yet spoken. They stopped under a glowing street lamp, the soft drizzle catching in Clara's hair. Ethan turned to her, his eyes searching her face like he was afraid to look away. I don't even know what to say anymore, he admitted, his voice low and honest. Clara gave a small, tired smile. Maybe there's nothing left to say. Or maybe, he said gently, there's just too much. For a moment, neither spoke. The rain's whisper filled the space, the sound steady and calm. Clara crossed her arms, not because she was cold, but because she didn't know what else to do with her hands. Her heart was racing, yet her thoughts felt strangely clear. She had spent so long imagining what she would say if this moment ever came. The anger, the hurt, the questions, but now that it was here, all she felt was peace, mixed with a quiet ache. Ethan stepped closer, careful, as if afraid of breaking something fragile. I don't expect you to forgive me, he said. I just needed you to know that I never stopped caring. Not for a day. She looked up at him, the streetlight catching the softness in his eyes. You had a strange way of showing it, she said. Not cruelly, but truthfully. He nodded. I know. I was scared back then. Scared of staying, scared of losing you, scared of everything. He laughed quietly, shaking his head. And in trying not to lose you, I lost you anyway. His honesty disarmed her. There was no defense left in her heart, only the truth that she had never stopped missing him either. You can't undo what's done, she said softly. I'm not trying to, he said. I just want to stop pretending that I don't still feel the same. The simplicity of his words left her breathless. They carried no promises, just truth, and somehow that was enough. Clara took a small step closer, close enough to feel his warmth through the damp air. You think we can really start over? After everything? Ethan's gaze didn't waver. I don't know, but I'd rather try and fail than walk away again. The city around them was quiet now. The rain had almost stopped, and somewhere in the distance, the faint sound of a train echoed through the night. Clara felt like the world had paused, like this moment existed only for them. She looked down at the puddle between their feet, the reflection of the streetlight rippling with every drop that fell. Her voice was barely above a whisper. You hurt me, Ethan. I know, he said, and I've hurt myself for it every day since. The sincerity in his tone reached her in a way she didn't expect. He wasn't asking for sympathy. He was admitting something that had haunted him. She realized then that they were both broken in the same way to people who had once loved deeply, made mistakes, and carried those mistakes like scars. When she looked up again, he was closer. Not too close, but close enough for her to see the raindrops on his eyelashes. The small tremor in his jaw when he swallowed. He looked at her like she was something precious, something he had been searching for far too long. Clara's voice softened. I don't know if I can trust you the way I used to. I don't expect you to, Ethan said. But I'll earn it if you let me. Her heart tightened at his words. She wanted to believe him. She wanted to believe that people could change, that love could survive distance and time. Maybe it wasn't about going back. Maybe it was about beginning again. This time with all the truth they once avoided. The drizzle turned into a soft mist that wrapped around them like a veil. The city lights blurred in the distance, glowing through the haze. Clara took a deep breath. What if it doesn't work? He smiled faintly. Then at least we'll know we didn't stop trying. Something inside her shifted then. It wasn't sudden, more like a quiet realization that she didn't want to live wondering anymore. She had spent years protecting herself from pain, building walls so high that nothing could reach her. But now, standing there in the rain with the man she wanted